fishing, hunting, outdoor experiences of all kinds.
Yeah, eat your heart out, New Hampshire. I mean, nobody else in New England can do that. Nobody else in the eastern United States can pull this off at this point.
Right, and it just, with the development of southern areas of New England, this is kind of one, I don't want to call it the last frontier, but it really is kind of on the outer edges of where the larger cities and towns of southern Maine come.
This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine, and we're on the outer edges of civilization for today's show, if you want to define that as Grand Lake Stream. This whole area has been dubbed a sportsman's paradise for many generations. The hunting and fishing in the region has been legendary for hundreds of years. But the area has been under two threats for a couple of decades. Like other parts of Maine, traditional sporting isn't enough to drive today's economy, nor are forestry operations as dominant as they once were. Meanwhile, there was a period when Maine's lakes were envied for vacation home development, so city dwellers could grab a piece of Maine's remote tranquility. That's when the Downeast Lakes Land Trust came into existence, to conserve much of this area for what Mainers have been doing for centuries: hunting, fishing, and forestry. It's one of the biggest, most unique conservation areas in the state, and it's all yours to play with. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Napa Auto Parts, and EBS. Maybe this is a surprise, maybe not. At the turn of the century in 1900, the population of Grand Lake Stream was 5 times what it is today. Back then, about 500 people were permanent residents of the tiny village, sustained by forestry, tanning, and of course the tremendous fishery. It was nationally famous for landlocked salmon, and it still is. But the tanneries didn't survive the 19th century. And more locals took up the challenge of serving all of the sportsmen that were coming to the area. Nowadays, the salmon are still there, but bass fishing and bird hunting have become increasingly important this century. The big square-stern canoes called Grand Lakers have been part of this history, and they're still very popular today. Sporting camps are popular, but not as popular as they once were. There are still a lot of them, but you're seeing a decline as the sporting passion and vacation styles of modern families continue to shift in America. So if you want to see a microcosm of rural Maine, what it was and what it is, this is a good place to look. A week ago, I was asked to do a talk for the Downeast Lakes Land Trust on a Friday evening. That was followed by a bird walk last Saturday morning. Today's show is not about that bird talk or walk. But I will tell you that if you wanted a lively place to find some winter birds, this was it. In winter, a lot of Canadian birds are driven south, joining up with our own wintering birds into big flocks. These are primarily seed-eating finches like goldfinches, pine siskins, common redpolls, purple finches, and crossbills. But also some fruit-eating birds like pine grosbeaks and Bohemian waxwings. Well, on this particular day, the goldfinches, pine siskins, and red crossbills were all over Grand Lake Stream. The air was alive with the sound of birds, hundreds and hundreds swarming all over the village. Now the colder weather has returned to Maine. That's finally happening elsewhere, too. It was a pretty good walk, but that's not what today's show is all about. All of today's show is taking place inside a Subaru Forester as the Education and Outreach Manager for the Downeast Lakes Land Trust, Colin Braun, takes me over the dirt roads west of Grand Lake Stream for a first-hand winter view of this amazing area. And the best place to start is the beginning. What is Downeast Lakes Land Trust?
So the Downeast Lakes Land Trust is a community-led conservation group based here in Grand Lake Stream, Maine. We contribute to the long-term environmental and economic well-being of the Downeast Lakes region through the conservation and management of the forest and waters in and around Grand Lake Stream. And it was founded by residents and officially formed in 2001 to really preserve the way of life here with the tradition of guiding and living off the forest and waters that surround the town.
Were there any specific threats that to force the issue and conserve?
Yeah, in the came about really in the 90s, notably the late 90s. A lot of timber companies started selling off large tracts of land, and rumors of subdivision and that dreaded word condominiums came up, and many of the residents formed to really, like I said, preserve the way of life and maintain the tourism and the fishing guiding industry that was here. So that was really kind of the tipping point. That early on there was several acres that was planned development along the stream itself that would have blocked off access for fishermen and guides and things like that. And that was in the early 90s, and that was eventually prevented, and the state of Maine now owns that property. And from there, it kind of just really became a grassroots campaign of citizens in the town to really push for high levels of conservation in the area.
That makes this particular land trust different from all the other land trusts in the state. For one thing, it's enormous.
It is, yeah. We currently own and manage the Farm Cove Community Forest, just shy of 34,000 acres contiguous land west of Grand Lake Stream, and we're currently closing in on finishing a project, the West Grand Lake Community Forest Project, which would add an existing 22,000 acres of shorefront on West Grand Lake over to Musquash Stream. So it would put us at just shy of 56,000 acres, which is a massive amount of land for a small community land trust.
It really is. I've seen numbers that indicate this isn't just one of the biggest land trusts in Maine, it's one of the biggest in the nation.
It is, yeah. I haven't seen actual acreage numbers to compare, but I haven't seen any come across any that are larger. And with the scope and size of the land, does come some challenges with proper maintenance and preserving public and open access to everything. But growing the number of land is really helping to protect the way of life in Grand Lake Stream.
I think one of the things that makes Downeast Lake Land Trust a little bit different than some of the other land trusts as well is that it's designed to conserve not just land, but tradition uses, forestry, fishing, all the recreational aspects that were here before.
Yeah, several of our public programs really highlight the natural history of the area itself. Logging was such a major sustainable industry and still really helps the areas of northern Washington County.
So before we get any further, why don't you orient me? We left Grand Lake Stream a few minutes ago. Which direction are we heading now?
We are currently heading west on Fourth Lake Road, which is the common name you'll see on the Gazetteer. It says Wabasis Road. Heading west out in between Pecumcus Lake and Wabasis Lake, heading towards really the Duck Lake, Maine Public Reserve lands.
Okay, so you can get there from here.
You can, in a car that's hardy enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I find if you do it in the summer or the spring or when the logging trucks are around, some of these roads get a little muddy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so this is laid out in a number of different regions. You've acquired these in bits and pieces over time. I'm going to assume that they were for different purposes at different times as well. Some for forestry, some for other conservation reasons. Why don't you explain?
And I'm going to ask actually we'll stop and slow down right here. The parcels were acquired at different points. One of the initial big first purchases, if you will, or project was the Downeast Lakes Forestry Partnership. Was a partnership with several conservation groups, not only just in Maine, but in New England, notably the New England Forestry Foundation. That purchased the initial Farm Cove Community Forest was about 22 or 23,000 acres. And that was part of the property we're on right now. A few years later after that was the Wabasis Lake tract, which was added an existing about 7,000 or 8,000 acres. So we are actually at Grand Lake Brook right here, and a big part of our conservation work that we've undertaken is wildlife habitat and restoration, notably stream restoration, and we've worked with a lot of partners to replace old existing culverts that were on these logging roads that had been beaten down into the ground and were really not good or suitable at all for fish passage.
Right.
And we're at Grand Lake Brook right here. We just undertook this one this summer in a partnership with Project Share, and helped us rebuild this. It was about a 20-foot crossing with a arch culvert that allows natural stream beds for better passage for brook trout and different native fish that will come up here. Really what happens is those old culverts they get so much turbidity in the water and
Yep.
Gouges out, and it really doesn't allow a stream bed, and fish cannot pass up through. So we've actually undertaken about over 20, I believe it's close to 25 different projects on our property, and a few in town in Grand Lake Stream as well, to improve the native fish habitat.
Some of these projects have been so significant that they were demonstration projects. I've seen video used to indicate how to replace culverts
They are, yeah. There was actually there was a Maine Audubon paid
Yeah.
for one of the videos that actually showed how, and it really is kind of something that has only come up in the last 5 or 10 years, and large landowners, land trusts, and timber companies are starting to use them as a model. And actually, we have had people come to visit Downeast Lakes Land Trust and the Farm Cove Community Forest to actually see what we've done to use as a model for other organizations.
Yeah, people don't realize, I think, just how tricky culverts got. Initially, they were just made to pass water, and no one ever thought about the aquatic life and the fish.
Yeah.
And two bad things happened. First of all, you could undersize them, in which case they would just jet water out the other side and scour. And eventually, that leads to a waterfall. It just scours out what's beneath the outflow, and suddenly the fish can't get up anymore.
Yeah, and it'll even create gravel bars, even off to our left right here. You can't see with the snow right now, but it was just a huge scour part that has literally changed the direction of the stream flow from so many years of overuse for this culvert. And like I said, they were built great back in the day when they were. However, they didn't take, habitat was not a priority. And with culverts as well, expenses can become a problem. There's a lot of expense, not even just for the culvert itself, but installation.
Well, people realized over time that fish need to move. Where they, in the swimming holes, where they can feed and find cooler water in summer, is not where they need to be to lay eggs and breed in upstream gravel bars, for instance. So, so if they don't move, they don't live.
Right, and some of these more forested areas provide excellent shade for brook trout, which need those cooler waters, like you said, in the summer. And if you look upstream from where we are right now, heading towards Farm Cove, a cove of West Grand Lake, there's some great coniferous cover in there that helps for that habitat. But without this new culvert, they wouldn't even be able to get up to that section of the forest.
If you're just joining us here on Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine, we're in a car driving the snow-covered dirt roads west of Grand Lake Stream, taking a quick winter tour of the Downeast Lakes Land Trust. Colin Braun is the Education and Outreach Manager, and he's showing us around. This section is the Farm Cove Community Forest. But what is a community forest? And what can the local community do with it? Stand by. This is Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Welcome back to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. This whole show is happening inside a Subaru Forester. We're driving the back roads behind Grand Lake Stream with Colin Braun, Education and Outreach Manager for the Downeast Lakes Land Trust. This huge conservation area has been assembled from various parcels, and this particular one is the Farm Cove Community Forest. Now, when you say community forest, that implies something, but I can't figure out what. What's the community part?
It does, and we really take pride in the fact that it is a community forest, not just for the communities of Grand Lake Stream and Princeton and areas around here, but it's a community forest in the sense of it's public access and open for all. We have folks come from all over the state of Maine, New England, and well beyond for fishing, hunting, hiking, camping, canoeing, you name it. We encourage the fact that there are really no gates on this property, and it remains open for public use, not in the sense of preservation, but really for conservation, that this forest has helped sustain these communities for so long.
So when you think about the various lakes regions of Maine, and you can think about Sebago Lake, you can think about the Rangeley Lakes area, you can think about the Belgrade Lakes, you can think about Moosehead Lake. When tourists from away are considering which lakes to go to, what makes this one different? How would you describe this as the opportunity to come to?
It's interesting because, Maine is just filled with so many different lake regions that they're really all beautiful in their own right. I think one of the unique thing about the Downeast Lakes region is its remoteness. It's something that we want to allow more people to come here, but Grand Lake Stream is kind of the dead end of a 10-mile paved road into the woods, and we have all these access points in here. But I think because this area has been remained so remote and remained true to its traditional uses, that it's kind of been largely undiscovered. However, it is starting to people are starting to come here and see more of its natural beauty as those places, like you said, Sebago and Moosehead, get much more crowded. We're able to capitalize on the people that want really peace and solitude and want their own
I will say the Moosehead doesn't think it's crowded yet.
No, that's true, and I believe the natural progression of tourism coming up the Maine coast is spreads further east and north as you go, as the years pass. So we actually just had an article published in Canoe and Kayak on their online magazine featuring the Downeast Lakes Water Trail, which we have set up and built 9 water access campsites all throughout these several interconnected lakes, and we have plans for building more as well. But word's starting to get out. So, and what we're coming up on as well, or it'll be probably another mile or so up ahead, is will be one of our next fish restoration projects, pretty much in between Wabasis and Pecumcus Lake.
I'm trying to remember my history here because it doesn't go back very far. The Land Trust, if I recall correctly, the Land Trust really was focused initially on making sure to preserve the camping and fishing spots along the lakes. Long before you started putting in trails, the emphasis was really to preserve those spots along the lake that were good for camping, fishing.
Yep. Yeah, there are several, in addition to the Downeast Lakes Water Trail campsites, there are several what they call guide sites in town. The Grand Lake Stream Guides Association manages, maintains, and provides picnic tables and funding to help maintain those sites where they take clients for the traditional shore lunch of Grand Lake Stream.
Another thing about this area that is really unique compared to those other lakes regions is that a lot of the sporting camps, the fishing camps especially, are still here and pretty much still preserved the same way they were.
They are, yeah, and owners of those camps have taken, have gone to great lengths to make sure that the American plan is still there, that the meals are still being served the same way that they were, that lunches are being packed with the same idea of, buttered pickles and baked potatoes and true guides coffee as it's meant to be. But it really, like you said, it does maintain the local tradition of guiding and a true Maine lodge experience as opposed to, a B&B or a motel.
Yeah, even on Moosehead Lake, which had a long tradition of fishing, you don't see that kind of sporting camp thriving as well as you still do in this area.
True. I was in Greenville this summer. I had a few days off and went up camping on Spencer Bay, and Greenville I was surprised how busy it had been. I hadn't been in 3 or 4 years, but a little bit more, less of the traditional aspect that still really lives on here.
You get a little bit of the Rangeley Lakes area, but still not anywhere near like what you get in the Grand Lakes area.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I've been watching for blackback woodpecker signs too. Ooh, and take a look at that one. Look at that one. I like the looks of that. That one's not really fresh, but it's close. I mean, it's been worked over this in the last month. Oh, this is a good area.
Surprisingly, too, also just back, about a mile or so back, is a great spot for spruce grouse.
Is that right?
I've happened to see, I see a lot of spruce grouse right along this road, coming down for gravel and bugs, and notably in the summertime. I haven't seen
this area right here. This would be good for spruce grouse. Not great, but good.
And it's something that I've personally been, since joining the trust last year. I'm a birder myself, so I'm trying to bring more birding programs and more exposure to the area. We've had some surveys done that there are over 180 species that have been documented in the Farm Cove Community Forest, and species that a lot of people, if they're coming up from southern regions on vacation, they want to see those boreal species, the chickadees, the spruce grouse, the blackback woodpeckers. So
I know I make part of my living off that.
It's become kind of a secret spot, if you will.
Yeah, and this is such a big plot of land, essentially, that it's really hard to figure out where those secret spots are. I have not spent enough time exploring this. I've done some.
Not only is it such a big piece of land, but there's so many varied habitats within here, and likely due to the years of logging and industry that was here, it's kind of created a lot of early successional forests, and there are a lot of great stands of spruce and fir that provide good cover for not only for birds but for deer in the winter as well. So the real mix of varied habitats in the many lake shores add to its birding and wildlife potential.
Well, talk about mix. When you actually look at the forest itself, it's got a lot of those northern forest species like the spruce and the fir, but also a lot of pine and hemlock too. There's a lot of variation in here.
A lot of hemlock, about I would say anywhere, close to a third of the species of trees on the property are hemlock, and it's what was used to sustain what was once the world's largest tannery around the turn of the century, about 120 years ago in Grand Lake Stream. They used the tannins from the hemlock to tan hides from all over the world, and the remains of that tannery are where the Grand Lake Stream fish hatchery is currently today.
Colin Braun is my guest. He's Education and Outreach Manager for the Downeast Lakes Land Trust. If it sounds like this show is rattling, it's because we're in a car, driving the back roads west of Grand Lake Stream and taking a personal look. This is a big land trust, so when is big enough? What is the plan? Well, that's next, and later, what can you do to have more fun with it? This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Saturday mornings at 9, Sunday mornings at 8. Right this minute, there are radio shows taking place in studios all over Maine. This is the only radio show taking place in a car. We're driving the back roads of the Downeast Lakes Land Trust with Colin Braun, Education and Outreach Manager. Some of these roads are plowed, some are just packed down. So far, so good. When you talk about conservation, how much of this is owned in fee and how much of it is just easements?
Right now, currently, we own in fee the Farm Cove Community Forest, so we have almost 34,000 acres. But the Downeast Lakes Forestry Partnership, that was the first initial purchase of this fee land, included conservation easements on over 350,000 acres, which are actually and contiguous acres as well in northern Washington County. And it connects, if you actually cross the border of the St. Croix River, it connects to New Brunswick Crown lands as well. So it creates over 1 million acres of contiguous conserved forest land that really provides just, not only just wildlife and bird watching, but fishing, hunting, and outdoor experiences of all kinds.
Yeah, eat your heart out, New Hampshire. I mean, nobody else in New England can do that. Nobody else in the eastern United States can pull this off at this point.
Right, and it just, with the development of southern areas of New England, this is kind of one, I don't want to call it the last frontier, but it really is kind of on the outer edges of where the larger cities and towns of southern Maine come. And then you have a lot of small villages like Grand Lake Stream who have long made their living off these woods. So, getting them conserved and protected was really the big priority for at the initial development of the trust.
Yeah, and that's a key point. I think a lot of people mistakenly believe that land trusts are putting land into a museum.
Yeah.
In reality, this is conservation that conserves it for the values that it always had, that always sustained our economy. And that is forestry, and it is fishing, and it is a little bit of recreation, but mostly it's the forestry and the fishing.
Yeah, preservation's not a word we use at all. It really is conservation. It is protecting the land for the use of people in the area and from away as well. Like I said, we don't put up any gates. There's no trees behind glass or bars or anything like that. We like to, keep public access and promote recreation as much as possible.
Yep.
And this spot right here where we're coming up, this is what people will call the Thoroughfare, one of the several lake crossings. You can see Pecumcus Lake to the north, and then Wabasis Lake. There's a beaver dam just beyond that. To the south, and this was a major spot for portaging for not only old Passamaquoddy canoe routes, but trappers and Native Americans had used these waterways for ages. Because these lakes are really all interconnected, it allowed for such easy travel for whether you were hunting or fishing or guiding.
Is there a road right here, little side road?
There is. There's a boat off to the left. There's a little boat launch.
Ah, that's right. I remember coming. It's been like years since I've been in this spot, but I remember there was a road next to one of these landings that looked really good for birds.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've been watching for it.
And that part right there, that's one of our culvert projects that we'll be undertaking in the future as well.
Mm-hmm. Talk about the traditional uses, hunting and fishing. Hunting. What do you allow for hunting in here? What don't you?
We don't place any restrictions on any thing for species, as long as people are, following Maine state hunting laws and have the proper licensure. It's open for any sport hunting allowed, and there are still several people who guide for different animals in this forest: deer, bear, moose. So there are several species that people hunt for in the fall and winter in the community forest.
Do you allow baiting?
We do. We don't allow personal sites, but we do allow commercial baiting sites. A big part of our mission is to support the local economy. So we do have commercial bear bait sites that guides do take customers out into the forest.
Well, it's traditional use once again, because you probably have a higher concentration of registered Maine guides in this area than anywhere else in the state. I can't think of a higher concentration.
I believe per capita, it is Grand Lake Stream is a very small town, so it helps drive our numbers up.
Yeah.
But per capita, I believe we have the most registered Maine guides in the state.
Sure, and it's not just Grand Lake Stream. There are other communities around here full of guides as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
You got turkeys in here much yet?
I've seen a few. I've seen several in Princeton. Heading more towards the coast, I've seen more wild turkey, but not as many in the community forest.
Mm-hmm. We just passed a road called Ellsmore's Landing. I'm assuming that there are lakes that I can't see from here.
There is. That would be the landing that would, as a public landing, and several small camps. That's actually land that's owned by Woodland Pulp, and they maintain that as a summer place. And that would be a landing on Pecumcus Lake.
Mm-hmm. We talked about how big this has gotten, both between the in-fees and the conservation area. How much is going to be enough? Have you got your eyes on more, or is this getting to the point where you've done the job?
No, it's a good question, and we're not looking too far to the future. We're really focused right now on finishing the West Grand Lake Community Forest project, which has been a 7-year and close to $20 million campaign to possess that 22,000 acre land. So looking beyond that, we're not looking past that right now.
Mm-hmm. So what else do you allow on here? Would you allow fur tipping?
We do. We issue tipping permits. They're $5 a piece, and we do allow throughout the year with
$5 a piece.
$5 a piece. They're a lot more affordable. Some other timber companies will charge a lot more for larger lands.
Yeah.
And we did give out several this year, probably close to 24 tip permits, likely due to the higher price of brush. So we allow tipping permits. We even issue cordwood permits to local residents that can come in the Farm Cove Community Forest and harvest up to 4 cord per year.
Do they have to pay you in any way, or you just let them do it?
They don't. We do ask that they tell us where they're going to be cutting. There are species restrictions: no sugar maple, no yellow birch, things like that. But if there's downed beech, especially if it's a downed wood at all, they can harvest what they'd like to use to heat their homes. And
right.
This is probably going to be the spot where I would say we
turn around.
Yeah.
Where are we?
This is, if you were to continue, we're turning left right here. If you were to continue down this road, this would end up take you down towards Third Machias Lake.
Oh, okay.
This goes through the Getchell Pugs and down towards Wabasis Mountain, and eventually would spit you back out on the CCC road and take you back down to Route 9. Mm-hmm. Clearly not in the winter. You can see there are truck tracks that people have tried the attempt. So,
yeah.
But yeah, this would be the extent of plowing as far as the Fourth Lake Road is concerned.
Yeah. People from away. Grand Lake Stream has always been a place that does have a lot of vacation homes.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people become part of the fabric of the community. They're as enthusiastic about supporting Grand Lake Stream as anybody who was born and bred here. It's sometimes more so.
Absolutely. And I'm from Connecticut, so I have to be careful about answering this question. A lot of the families that are up here, and whether it's vacation homes or not, they are 4th and 5th and 6th generation vacation homes. They've been coming here since they were really little kids, and their parents honeymooned here. So there's a lot of familial connections with people, whether they're from New York or Massachusetts or Southern Maine. But several of them, people who have come up to be simply from away to start, they've settled here and made their home and living up here. And I think, just communities in general in Washington County, there is such a community feel to this area where everyone has everyone else's back. Someone's house burns down and there's immediately a huge public supper and thousands of dollars are raised. And I think people are really attracted to the idea of living in a place where people are looking out for one another.
Today's episode of Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is in the wild areas west of Grand Lake Stream, home of the Downeast Lakes Land Trust. Education and Outreach Manager Colin Braun is showing me around. There is no area in Maine more famous than this area for hunting and fishing. But nowadays, that takes a little work. This land trust is actually managed for critters in surprising ways. Stand by. This is Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. This is Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket with Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. I'm with Colin Brown. He's Education and Outreach Manager for the Downeast Lakes Land Trust. We're driving the back roads west of Grand Lake Stream. So if it sounds a little bumpy, that's because it's a snow-covered dirt road. And when you look at it, there was something different about the way this forest is managed, too. All right, when we were in the village earlier of Grand Lake Stream, there were deer tracks everywhere. When you hear people in the area complain about no deer in Washington County, they can't be talking about here.
No, the herd is pretty healthy, and a lot of that probably is due to the fact that there is a lot of winter feed right now, and a lot of the deer yards, a lot of our management projects have been focused on preserving deer yards and deer habitat in and around the area. We have a focused species forestry project, which we target certain species of animals that would be needed in our forestry plans and improve their habitat as we are going and cutting.
So you don't go in and hollow out a cedar grove?
No, absolutely not. And even actually our current winter harvest that we've just completed was actually improving an area of deer habitat and thinning certain areas to allow better conifer regeneration to improve those deer yards.
Yeah, that's maybe one difference between just normal forestry land, where you're looking to maximize the potential for the valuable commercial trees to grow. So you do a lot of thinning. You take some of the more valuable trees. When you're doing it for multiple uses, protecting deer habitat, for instance, your forestry plan is really different.
Right, and it's not a commercial focused forestry. We have a community forest manager full time, Kyle Burdick, and he's a state licensed forester who does these harvest plans and really has a multi-use goal in his plans, whereas a commercial forester might focus simply on what is going to be the bottom dollar is really the be all end all. However, we're looking at not only focused species forestry, but we're looking at ways to improve public access, ways to improve wildlife habitat. So it's a multifaceted job that he has for sure.
When you first started out, there weren't a lot of walking trails within the preserve. That has been changing slowly over time, probably with the emphasis on slowly. But what are you doing now?
Right. Well, currently we have 4 hiking trails that we have maintained, that we maintain and protect every year. We have the Little Mayberry Cove Trail, which is a nice hike along West Grand Lake. We have the Pecumcus Trail, again a nice lakeside walk through.
I've done both of those.
Mixed habitat, have you? Yeah. Mm-hmm. We have Don Marie Beach, which is a little nice family-friendly, about a half-mile path that leads to a beach on Wabasis Lake, and we have the Wabasis Mountain Trail, which is about a mile up a small mountain in the community forest. We do have other plans for more trail creation, notably when we finish the West Grand Lake Community Forest Project, which we're still looking to close soon this year. And so we're kind of at the home stretch of that project, and we'll have more plans for trails in the near future.
First time I walked the Compass Trail, almost as soon as I get off the parking lot, there's a ruffed grouse right there in the middle of the trail waiting for me.
Yeah, and one of my very first visit to the trail, I was going out when I first started, and immediately a marten goes bounding right across the trail, which you never see anywhere.
I never see martens.
I had been wanting to see one for years, and if you see one at all, it's usually a flash. Mm-hmm. This one bounded across the trail 20 yards in front of me, scrambled up a beech tree, and just stood there and looked at myself and another one of our conservation interns, and we were just both in stunned silence. Yeah. So the wildlife viewing opportunities here are really endless.
Grouse hunters. You must have grouse hunters in here?
We do, yeah. Actually, and we've even improved some certain areas specifically for grouse habitat. We've worked with the Rough Grouse Society on an area of patch cuts up here that I'll actually point out when we go by.
As you say, this also connects to the Duck Lake area, which is preserved by IFNW,
yep,
and improved for grouse habitat as well. As the deer herd has dropped out in other parts of the state, a lot of us people who are involved in the sporting industries are commenting constantly about how much grouse hunting has picked up to replace it. You see a lot of bird hunters Lean's Lodge, just down the road here. They do an awful lot of hunting for birds, woodcock and grouse.
Yep, several of the lodges in town will guide for woodcock and grouse in town. The cuts that were coming right up here were a plan with the Rough Grouse Society. We call them the patch cuts, and they're just small 2 to 4 acre open cuts that were made, and Kyle, our forester, has come up with a plan for over the next series of cuts every 5 or 6 years to replace that early regeneration growth that grouse and woodcock love. You also see a lot of moose sign in there, chewing on the upcoming alders and things that are filling in that forest habitat.
The money from forestry and harvesting, where does that go?
It does go to help to pay certain bills that the land trust does have. Even though we're a nonprofit and we are tax exempt, we do pay our local taxes again to help the local economy. So it does go to our into our annual budget for paying salaries and road maintenance fees and many things that you can think of.
One of the things that drives me crazy, and there are lots of things that drive me crazy, is the complaint that when you put land into conservation, it takes it off the tax rolls. Reality, most of the time, that's not actually true.
Right, and our land is in tree growth, so we do have a reduced tax rate like anyone who has land in tree growth. But with a land trust, notably a community-led land trust, you want to improve the life in the community as much as you can, and the tax contributions every year do help the town of Grand Lake Stream and the area around it.
My guest is Colin Braun, Education and Outreach Manager for the Downeast Lakes Land Trust. We're in a Subaru Forester rumbling along the back roads west of Grand Lake Stream, getting a winter view of one of the biggest conservation areas in the state. It's managed for people and critters, and if you haven't figured out how to use it yet, we'll make it easy for you in the last segment of today's show that's coming up. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. Welcome back to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. This is the only radio show in Maine that gets out of the studio and into the woods, even in winter. Today, we're driving around the back roads of the Downeast Lakes Land Trust near Grand Lake Stream, where Colin Braun is my guest. He's Education and Outreach Manager. So a lot of this could be used for really good recreation. How do people find out how to use it?
So they can go to, if you're not familiar with the area and you're not from the Grand Lake Streams region, you can go to www.downeastlakes.org. We list we have a whole visitor's guide on the website that lists all different recreational opportunities and also gives news and events, our upcoming education programs that we might be hosting. We host education programs that are free and open to the public year-round, like this morning's bird walk, celebrating the Great Maine Outdoor Weekend and the Great Backyard Bird Count. And we again, contributing to the local economy, want to help provide and offer different educational programs to the region, not only in the area, but for Maine as well.
Now, the campsites, there are campsites along the lakes, and they're on your property. What's involved with using them? Can you reserve them? Is it first come, first serve?
Yep, it's the campsites, the water access campsites are a first come, first serve basis, and they're very simple campsites. They're picnic table, fire ring, and some of them have a remote privy as well. The fires, of course, you have to get a permit through the Maine Forest Service. There's a phone number to call on our map and our hiking and campsite map, and it is first come, first served basis, so they're not reserved, and there's a 3-night limit stay, which water access campsites is fine because usually people are moving on to the next campsite anyways.
Do you police that, or is it?
We don't. No, it's we don't really like to police much in the community forests, as long as people are following state laws and rules and things like that. Yeah. They're welcome.
Well, that secret won't leave this room. Boy, there are an awful lot of birds out here today, all finches. And that's just winter. What's it like in the summer?
Yeah, summertime is excellent. The warbler species that we have with such a mixed, varied habitat, we have well over 20 species of warbler on any given day, and that's not to mention when the lakes open back up, you've got a lot of great duck species, and the birding here really is phenomenal. We sponsor and take part in the Downey Spring Birding Festival every year, which we will again this year.
Oops, there's Forest Management for Wildlife. That sign. We got to back up to that.
Yeah, there's this one, and then there's another one. This is the edge of the patch cuts.
Forest Management for Wildlife. Tell me about it.
So this is we're on the edge of what I was referring to the patch cuts before. It was a project a few years back with the Rough Grouse Society making small 2 to 4 acre cuts in a sequential order that'll be rotated throughout the next every 5 years or so, and it's really wildlife habitat that's been opened up specifically for woodcock and ruffed grouse. But it's also, like I said, it attracts a lot of different animals in the spring and summer. There's some phenomenal raspberry and blackberry bushes in there that the bears and myself enjoy. Yeah. But a lot of the young shoots and the alders growing up, the moose love to come in here in the summer and fall. So these areas have really been opened up. And we're on an area called Doherty Ridge. This is the Doherty Ridge project for Rough Grouse Society, and it's attracted a lot of hunters. It is fairly close to town, one of the closest spots to town that is still in the Farm Cove Community Forest as well. So people will come out here guided or unguided, and I believe there's about a dozen of them that have been opened up like this in the forest.
Yeah. So you've got events that happen during the winter, and some of those are on property, some are all around. What's going on?
Upcoming, we're helping sponsor a poker run that's being put on by the St. Croix Valley Chamber of Commerce. That is happening on Saturday, February 27th. That is a joint venture with 5 different snowmobile clubs all in the area.
Wow, really?
Which is been really a great community effort to come together to make that happen. And then on the following Sunday, it would be a great weekend in Grand Lake Stream. We're going to have an introduction to ice fishing program. We're partnering up with Princeton Rod and Gun Club, and they are bringing all their gear and equipment out to the lake. And Machias Savings Bank is bringing some food as well. So we'll have a campfire on shore and then do some ice fishing on West Grand Lake. That is the Sunday, the 28th of February at noon here in Grand Lake Stream. And then the following weekend, actually on March 5th, we have a unique program where we are bringing up a musical group from away down east. They normally sing maritime historical songs. They are actually doing old log driving and lumberjack songs, touching again upon the natural history and of the history and traditional use of the forest. That's going to be Saturday, March 5th at 1 p.m. in the old schoolhouse. They play a really intimate performance, banjo, guitar, all different instruments you can imagine. So something different and unique that we haven't really done in the past, but people are excited about it.
The sign says to Route 9. I have gone home to the Old Town area from Grand Lake Stream several different times. For whatever reason, I never get the same road twice. It's not like I'm lost. Every road sooner or later gets down to the airline.
Yeah, they do. They all interconnect down to Route 9.
And the
Stud Mill is that main artery as well, and then Route 6 to the north. But it's one of those places where, if you're lost, you're bound to keep following logging roads. You'll end up somewhere.
But every time, I don't think I've taken the same road twice. And every time I curse myself saying, I thought for sure I knew the way.
But I bet you found good birds along the way.
I did. I found great habitat, great birds, had good adventures, beat up the car a little bit on some of the roads that maybe I should have been on.
Yeah, deer right ahead.
Killed a deer, yeah.
Speaking of the deer herd.
Yeah. But gee whiz, I don't know why I keep screwing that up, but I do.
Allows for really good cover.
They must be used to people because that deer is just staring back at us.
Some of them are several are pretty tame, yeah.
I've got to think there are a few apples left in the yards out there.
There are.
Didn't get there by accident.
Right.
You have ongoing fundraising, and then you must have certain capital campaigns for big projects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do have capital campaigns for the larger projects, like I mentioned before, West Grand Lake Community Forest Project. We're wrapping up that campaign. We do mailings twice a year to our supporters. We do not have any members, a membership program, but we do have supporters who help us through these projects at different points of the year, and we also have corporate sponsors as well. Usually for some of our larger events, summertime is obviously a much busier time of year when you have many people coming back to town and you have more of the guided fishing and hunting going on. So summertime we have a lot of different public programs going on. Some of the highlights are we do a moonlit paddle up Musquash Stream on the full moon in July. It's been a really big hit. And we also do a flatwater paddle race on West Grand Lake. That'll be the second Sunday in August. And something new that actually happened a couple of years ago, we've partnered with Baxter Outdoors.
Yes, I heard about that.
We host the Downeast Lakes 5 Miler, which is a beautiful trail. We're on along mixed woodlands and a little Mayberry Cove trail along West Grand Lake, and that's been a big draw as well. So summertime is really a happening time here for us in Grand Lake Stream.
I have to say that Mayberry Cove trail is a favorite because there's lots of scarlet tanagers in there, pine warblers. I mean, you go in there and it's a loud place.
Yep.
All right, any last words from the Downeast Lakes Land Trust?
No, just that the Farm Cove Community Forest is open, and we welcome everyone around the state of Maine to Grand Lake Stream to come and enjoy outdoor adventures. If you would like to have any more information, you can give us a call at 207-796-2100, or like I said before, check out the website downeastlakes.org and like us on Facebook.
Yep, a lot of radio shows I'm sure would come here in summer. This is probably the only radio show that would ever come here in winter.
Thank you for doing it as well.
The place is Grand Lake Stream. The subject is the Downeast Lakes Land Trust. And that other voice belonged to Colin Brown, Education and Outreach Manager for the Trust. We've been touring some of the back roads on one small part of the Land Trust. We missed a lot. The canoe trails, the walking trails, and many of the other roads that just aren't plowed out this time of year. I'll leave the rest of the exploration to you. To do your research, it's downeastlakes.org. Next week, what does it take to be a Maine game warden? They're actually looking to hire 6 new ones. If you're actively interested or just plain curious, this will be a show you don't want to miss. We'll be on next Saturday morning at 9 and Sunday morning at 8, plus all shows are archived online at 929theticket.com. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Napa Auto Parts, and EBS on Sports Radio 929 The Ticket.